It looks like they're deceased and they've been burned.
Those are kids. Those are kids. There's some shoe prints right here, too.
Two teenage brothers, 14-year-old Larry Ordway and 16-year-old Maurice Gordon, lay dead behind a vacant house in West Louisville. Their bodies were burned, mutilated, and left in the dirt like evidence someone hoped would never be found. This story does not begin with their murders. It begins weeks earlier, with a single gunshot and paranoid belief that would spiral into brutality. A belief held by a man named Brice Rhodes, a self-styled rapper who moved through Louisville's street culture under aliases like Rambo. How did a killing on South 41st Street trigger a chain of events that ended with two teenage brothers begging for their lives, and how their desperate pleas were ignored? Larry Ordway and Maurice Gordon grew up in West Louisville. Larry was the younger of the two. At just 14, he was described as kind, polite, and eager to please. Teachers remembered him as a boy who smiled easily, the sort of kid who laughed at jokes that weren't even funny, simply because he wanted everyone else to feel good. Maurice, at 16, was the natural big brother. He liked attention, loved sports, and carried the swagger of someone who believed he was destined for something more. Despite their circumstances, the boys still had a home filled with expectations and warnings. Their mother, Elizabeth Wren, tried to keep them close and grounded. She worked constantly, pushed them towards school, and worried about the people they were spending time with. She knew West Louisville wasn't forgiving of bad decisions. More importantly, she knew who her sons were starting to admire. Standing on the edge of the world was a man who seemed larger than life, Brice Rhodes. To neighborhood teens, Brice wasn't just another adult. He was the image of respect, reputation, and danger wrapped into one. He drove nicer cars, boasted connections, and spoke like a man who lived outside the rules. Wren had warned her sons about Brice. She begged them to stay away. But warnings rarely compete with curiosity, and in neighborhoods like this, influence travels faster than advice. Larry and Maurice began spending more time around Brice. They were looking for identity, a place to belong. Brice offered that. And then, in early May 2016, everything Larry and Maurice thought they understood about Brice changed. On May 4th, 2016, a routine spring night on South 41st Street in Louisville took a fatal turn. The man at the center was 40-year-old Christopher Jones, a man detectives later described as a father just walking home. Also in the car that night were Maurice, Larry, along with Anwan Carter.
Maurice is driving, Larry in the passenger seat, Brice in the behind Maurice, and Corey on the other side.
And who had the gun?
Brice.
Without warning, the vehicle stopped when Brice, driving in that same group, stepped out, pulled a gun, and shot Christopher Jones in the chest.
I heard somebody say, "Get out the street, bitch," and the shot went off.
He fell in the street, and then I tried to trip back in. I ran him over.
You ran him over?
He fell in the street with no purpose.
Did you all drive by him to make sure if he was the right guy, or did Rambo just basically shoot the first guy you all came upon?
He just shot the first guy we saw.
He did it not out of a heated argument, but out of paranoia. Brice believed Jones was a rival on whom a bounty had been placed.
Did he tell you he would split it with you?
He was going to split it with all of us.
Did you say how much it was?
10 bands.
I'm sorry?
10 bands, 10,000.
Jones was rushed to the hospital, but the wound proved fatal. He died during surgery. Ja'Cory Taylor, a member of the gang, later testified he remembered Brice threatening the boys, demanded silence, and said their lives were now his decision.
After the shooting, what did you all do?
We didn't really talk about much. We just basically just told us not to tell nobody. That was it. We was all scared. You know what I mean? It wasn't just them two. We was all scared. You know what I'm saying? Maurice, Larry, all of us. We was scared, man.
You were scared?
Yeah, we was young. You know what I'm saying? We just went along with it.
On May 21st, 2016, just 17 days after Christopher Jones was shot, Brice called Larry and Maurice to his apartment. To the boys, it seemed like any other night, a chance to hang out, to feel included, to be around someone they still believed was powerful. But this wasn't a visit. It was a trap. Inside that apartment were 3 other teenagers, Anwan Carter, Ja'Cory Taylor, and Tieran Coleman. They weren't there by accident. Brice had already decided what needed to happen. The boys were no longer friends. They were witnesses, and Brice couldn't risk witnesses.
Did Brice Rhodes say anything about Larry and Maurice?
Just said that he can't mess with them no more because they told their mama about the situation. He feared they would say something to the police.
What did he tell you he wanted to do to them?
So we gotta kill him. Brice said he asked Maurice, "Are you telling on me?" or something like that. And he kind of denied it, like, "Nah, I ain't doing this," stuff like that. At that point, he said we gotta violate him and stuff like that.
At some point that night, Brice turned on them. He grabbed belts, tied Larry and Maurice's hands, and covered their heads to limit their movement. Maurice panicked. He reached for a knife, maybe to free himself, maybe just to create distance. But his fear only accelerated Brice's rage.
Can you describe the knife?
It was like a big combat knife.
What did Brice do after he took the knife?
He's like he gonna violate him.
Did that alarm Maurice? How did Maurice respond?
He gonna go with it. He thought it was just gonna be a punch in the chest. Both of them in the bathroom. We took a vote.
Both who?
Larry and Maurice.
Where are you guys?
In the living room.
What happens in the living room?
We took a vote.
What's this vote on?
If they should die or not.
Who's calling the vote?
Brice.
What was your vote?
I'm the one that said no. I just said yeah.
From here, every second became torture. Brice took the knife and stabbed Maurice repeatedly.
Where did you stab him?
In his chest, in his stomach, on his torso.
How long did this go on for?
Until he stopped breathing.
Then came Larry, the younger brother. Smaller, pleading, terrified. Carter said Brice dragged Larry out of the bathroom where he had tried to hide and stabbed him again and again.
He passed the knife on him.
Who did he pass the knife to?
He passed it to me.
Why'd he pass you the knife? They're both dead, right? So you would participate?
Yeah.
So what did you have to do with the knife?
I stabbed him.
Who'd you stab?
Larry.
How many times did you stab Larry?
Like 3.
Was Ja'Cory handed the knife?
Yeah.
Before or after they were both dead?
After.
Do you know what he did with the knife?
He stabbed him a few times.
Who did he stab?
Larry.
In the end, no one protected them. No one stopped it. The 2 brothers, not criminals, died believing that someone they admired had turned into someone they couldn't escape.
Why didn't you and Anwan just leave during the night while he was gone?
I was too scared, to be honest with you. I wasn't even in my right state of mind at that point. We just went along. We just did what he told us to do.
In the hours after the murders, Brice and 3 teenagers, Anwan Carter, Ja'Cory Taylor, and Tieran Coleman, placed the brothers' bodies into large plastic storage bins. They loaded those bins into Brice's car. At some point during the night, Brice drove to a vacant house off River Park Drive in West Louisville. Behind those vacant homes, the bins were removed. The boys' bodies were dragged into the dirt. Gasoline was poured. A flame was lit. Fire spread across their small bodies, and Brice believed the flames would consume the truth. In the early hours of May 22nd, neighbors near River Park Drive noticed smoke behind the vacant house. It wasn't the smell of a controlled burn or yard trash. It was chemical, acrid, out of place. Someone called the detectives.
It's 2 dead bodies later. They look like they are burned up.
It seems like they were tortured and burned so that evidence wouldn't be found. And this is really scary, because this is a new height of crime.
On arriving, they followed the glow of embers. There, among scorched debris, they saw something no one should ever see. The burned remains of 2 teenagers.
I did see police officer put the sheet down with the body, and he just shook his head like he was about to cry. And that was what was really touching me. I'm like, now, if they're close up seeing this, and I'm back here, this is really bad.
They didn't yet know their names. They didn't yet know the story. But they knew this wasn't a random fire. Someone had tried to erase something and failed. Detectives secured the area and began processing the scene. They recovered fragments of clothing, partial remains, and burn patterns indicating the bodies had been intentionally set on fire.
Upon approaching the children, first thing we noticed is that they were laid out. There was no sign of like a struggle or other signs that there was like some kind of disturbance within it besides the actual bodies themselves and the actual burning of the bodies. So the first thing I noticed is that there's a good chance that they were not killed there.
They had obvious injury that would have resulted in blood evidence, and there was virtually no blood evidence on the scene.
But something else stood out, something that later complicated the case. Footprints around the burn site didn't match Brice. Tire tracks didn't match his car. None of the forensic impressions tied Brice physically to that location. If Brice planned the murders, why wasn't the evidence at the dump site a perfect match? The answer was simple. Brice didn't need to drive there. He had people who did. With bodies found but questions multiplying, detectives turned their attention to the only place that could explain everything: Brice's apartment, the last place the brothers were seen alive. With a search warrant in hand, detectives entered the residence on North Height Avenue. What they found inside didn't look like a home. It looked like a crime scene frozen in time, as though violence had happened so quickly and so chaotically that the walls themselves had absorbed the truth. The scene left behind told its own story. When detectives eventually searched Brice's apartment, they found so much blood soaked into the carpet that a portion had to be physically cut out and seized as evidence. This wasn't a drop or a smear. It was saturation. It spoke to struggle, to panic, to a brutal fight for life. In the bedroom, they discovered 2 knives and a hammer. These weapons were used in the murders of Larry and Maurice. Officers also discovered signs of a hurried attempt to clean the aftermath. They found bleach. They found damaged flooring. They found drag marks. Every detail pointed to the same conclusion. Something violent had happened here, and someone had tried to undo it.
What was the process for cleaning up?
We had some bleach, scrubbing the floor.
What were you scrubbing the floor with?
Rags.
How long did it take you to do this?
We went from that night to like next morning. We didn't go to sleep.
But perhaps the most telling discovery wasn't a weapon. It was a phone. Maurice Gordon's cell phone, hidden beneath a mattress, still inside Rhodes' apartment. The placement wasn't a coincidence. It was a mistake made in panic. That phone connected the brothers to that address on the night they died. It destroyed any hope Brice had of distancing himself from the crime. A short distance away, not in the apartment but in a nearby dumpster, detectives recovered burned fragments of a pink blanket. Forensic testing revealed this blanket contained evidence linking back to the brothers' deaths. As the pieces fell into place, the blood-soaked carpet, the weapons, the phone, the blanket, detectives realized they weren't investigating a single moment of violence. They were watching a pattern. As the investigation unfolded, detectives meticulously tracked phone records, surveillance, and witness statements to locate and apprehend each member involved. Much of the case was built on the testimony of 15-year-old Anwan Carter, who had been inside the apartment the night Larry and Maurice were killed. His first statements to detectives were incomplete. His second statements contradicted the first. His third version shifted again. Only later did Carter give what prosecutors called his final account, the version he testified to in court. In that testimony, he placed Brice at the center of everything: the tying of the boys, the stabbing of Maurice, the dragging of Larry, and the fire that tried to destroy what was left. All 3 teenagers faced their own charges, but only one of them, Brice, was tried for murder as an adult. The others were offered plea agreements that dramatically changed their futures. They would testify, and in exchange, they would be spared life sentences. This wasn't forgiveness, it was leverage, and prosecutors knew exactly how to use it. Brice's defense fought back. They argued that the state relied on teenage accomplices whose stories changed, whose sentences were reduced, and whose motives were questionable. They claimed the prosecution ignored evidence that didn't fit the narrative. And in a move that drew sharp attention, the defense introduced a controversial personal detail. They claimed Elizabeth Wren, mother of Larry and Maurice, had previously dated Brice and now hated him, using that to argue she was biased, emotional, and determined to see him convicted. Before trial, Brice underwent competency evaluations. Psychiatrists testified that Brice lived with ADHD, bipolar disorder, and intellectual limitations. His childhood was marked by instability and violence. Brice had a history of assaulting women in his life. In 2014, he was accused of attacking his own mother, grabbing her by the neck and punching her. In 2015, he punched his girlfriend while she held their infant child. These weren't allegations of potential violence. They were documented acts. The defense argued these conditions and traumas affected Brice's behavior and judgment. The judge agreed that because of his mental health diagnoses and intellectual deficiencies, the death penalty could not be pursued. But that didn't make Brice innocent. It made him accountable differently. Brice didn't watch quietly. His outbursts, accusations, and refusal to accept responsibility reinforced what prosecutors had been saying since day one. Brice wasn't merely violent. He was dangerous, manipulative, and convinced the rules didn't apply to him. And the jury could see it.
And it's my right to speak what I need to speak on. I don't know if y'all got some type of relationship going on or what y'all got going on, but I'm definitely going to speak my mind. Now I'm talking about you and the prosecutor over, sir. You denied all my motions. Every motion I filed, you didn't deny it.
I'm pretty sure I've denied the vast
every motion I filed. Are you some type of racist? Or y'all got some type of relationship going on? Which one is it?
Or are you just wrong in everything that you made a motion for?
Are you a secret Ku Klux Klan member?
No, sir.
Is that what you really are?
No.
Okay.
I'm not.
On December 18, 2023, the jury found Brice guilty of all three murders: the killing of Christopher Jones on May 4th, and the murders of Larry and Maurice just weeks later. He was also convicted of tampering with evidence and abuse of a corpse. On March 13, 2024, Brice was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Today, Brice Rhodes remains incarcerated at the Southeast State Correctional Complex in Kentucky, serving 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. His defense team has filed appeals challenging the conviction, but as of December 2025, he continues to be held without bond, his freedom permanently revoked by the weight of the evidence and the jury's unanimous verdict.